The 1356 Battle of Poitiers, a pivotal moment in the Hundred Years' War. The Battle of Poitiers, fought on September 19, 1356, was one of the most significant military engagements during the Hundred Years' War between England and France. The conflict itself was driven by long-standing disputes over territory and claims to the French throne, stretching back to 1337 and continuing for over a century. The battle, which culminated in a decisive English victory and the capture of the French King John II, is often cited as a turning point in the conflict. It exemplified the evolution of medieval warfare and solidified the growing reputation of Edward, the Black Prince, as one of England's finest military leaders. Let's explore the causes, the battle itself, and its far-reaching consequences. The prelude to Poitiers, background of the Hundred Years' War. To understand the significance of the Battle of Poitiers, it is essential to place it in the broader context of the Hundred Years' War. The origins of the war can be traced to disputes over territories in France, particularly the Duchy of Aquitaine, which had been held by the English crown since the 12th century. In 1328, the death of Charles IV of France without a male heir precipitated a crisis. Edward III of England, whose mother, Isabella of France, was Charles IV's sister, claimed the French throne. However, the French nobility rejected this claim and selected Philip VI, a cousin of Charles IV, as king. The ensuing rivalry over the crown and control of territories set the stage for the prolonged conflict. By 1356, the war had already seen several key battles, including the Battle of Crécy in 1346, in which the English had won a stunning victory despite being heavily outnumbered. The English strategy during this phase of the war involved the use of chevauchées, fast-moving raids across French territories aimed at pillaging towns, devastating the countryside, and disrupting the French economy. In 1355, Edward, the Black Prince, son of Edward III, led one such devastating raid through southern France from his base in Aquitaine. His campaign left the region in chaos and inflicted serious economic damage on the French. The road to Poitiers. In the summer of 1356, Edward, the Black Prince, embarked on another chevauchée, advancing from Bordeaux towards the Loire River, plundering French settlements along the way. This time, however, King John II of France, who had succeeded Philip VI in 1350, decided to take decisive action. He assembled a large army, estimated at between 14,000 and 16,000 men, and set out to intercept the English. The French king had several motives. Firstly, he sought to protect the heartland of France from the destructive raids of the English and their allies. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly, he hoped to defeat Edward in battle and restore French prestige after the humiliating losses earlier in the war. By contrast, the English army led by the Black Prince was significantly smaller, with an estimated 6,000 to 7,000 men. Despite being outnumbered, Edward was an experienced and skilled commander, known for his ability to exploit the terrain and his troops' mobility. As the French army pursued the English forces, Edward realized that he would have to confront King John in battle. The two armies met near the city of Poitiers in western France on September 19, 1356. Edward had selected a strong defensive position on high ground, flanked by thick hedges and woodland, which would limit the effectiveness of the French cavalry. The Battle of Poitiers. The Battle of Poitiers began with a failed attempt at negotiation. A papal legate, Cardinal Talleyrand de Périgord, sought to mediate a truce between the two sides. Although the Black Prince was willing to negotiate, King John II, confident in his numerical advantage, refused to accept anything less than a complete surrender of the English forces. With negotiations at an impasse, both sides prepared for battle. The French army was organized into 3 divisions, each led by prominent French nobles. King John II commanded the reserve division, which included some of the finest knights in France, while his son, Philip the Bold, led the vanguard. The French strategy relied on overwhelming the English with a series of frontal assaults, utilizing their heavily armored cavalry and infantry. However, this approach played directly into the hands of the English, who were well positioned for a defensive engagement. The English army consisted of dismounted knights, men-at-arms, and their famed longbowmen. The longbow, a weapon that had proven its worth at Crécy, was again to play a crucial role. The English archers, positioned behind natural defenses and protected by stakes, unleashed devastating volleys of arrows at the advancing French forces. As the French cavalry charged up the slope towards the English lines, they were met with a hail of arrows that disrupted their formations and caused chaos among their ranks. The constricted battlefield prevented the French from deploying their forces effectively. Many knights were thrown from their horses as they tried to navigate the uneven terrain. As the French attack faltered, the English men-at-arms launched counterattacks, taking advantage of the confusion in the French lines. The battle turned into a bloody melee, with the English inflicting heavy casualties on the French. A critical moment in the battle came when the English launched a flanking attack led by the Captal de Buch, a Gascon noble who commanded mounted troops. This attack struck the French from the rear, causing panic and further disarray. The French forces began to crumble, and soon the battle turned into a rout. Despite their superior numbers, the French were unable to recover. King John II and his son, Philip, fought bravely in the thick of the fighting, but they were eventually surrounded. In a dramatic scene, King John was captured by the English along with a large number of French nobles. The battle ended in a complete victory for the English, with the French suffering heavy losses in both men and morale. The consequences of Poitiers. The Battle of Poitiers had profound consequences for France and the broader conflict. Most immediately, the capture of King John II left France in a state of political turmoil. His son, Charles, the Dauphin, assumed the role of regent in his father's absence, but he faced immense challenges. The loss at Poitiers, coming after earlier defeats at Crécy and elsewhere, severely undermined the French monarchy's authority. In the years that followed, France was plagued by internal unrest, including the Jacquerie, a major peasant revolt in 1358, and factional struggles among the nobility. The English, on the other hand, were in a commanding position. Edward III and his son, the Black Prince, could now dictate terms to the French. King John II was held captive in England, where negotiations for his ransom began. The Treaty of Bretigny, signed in 1360, was a direct result of the English victory at Poitiers. Under the treaty's terms, France ceded large portions of territory, including much of Aquitaine, to the English crown. In exchange, Edward III renounced his claim to the French throne, and King John was released after a hefty ransom of 3 million gold crowns was paid. The ransom imposed a massive financial burden on France, contributing to further social unrest and weakening the monarchy's ability to govern effectively. Meanwhile, the English secured vast new territories in France, enhancing their control and influence on the continent. Military significance of the battle. The Battle of Poitiers is often cited as a testament to the changing nature of medieval warfare. The English reliance on longbowmen, combined with their use of defensive positions and mobile tactics, continued the trend that had begun at Crécy a decade earlier. The battle underscored the vulnerabilities of traditional mounted cavalry when confronted by disciplined infantry and archers in prepared positions. In addition to its tactical lessons, Poitiers solidified the reputation of Edward, the Black Prince, as one of the foremost military leaders of his era. His ability to lead a smaller, more agile force to victory against a much larger army demonstrated his tactical brilliance and helped to elevate him as a national hero in England. Therefore, the 1356 Battle of Poitiers was a defining moment in the Hundred Years' War, both for its immediate military outcome and for its broader political and social ramifications. The capture of King John II and the subsequent Treaty of Bretigny reshaped the geopolitical landscape of medieval Europe, creating a temporary peace but also sowing the seeds for future conflict. The battle showcased the growing importance of archers and infantry in medieval warfare and signaled the decline of the mounted knight as the dominant force on the battlefield. In the larger context of the 100 Years' War, Poitiers represented a high point for English ambitions, though the war itself would continue for many more decades, with fortunes rising and falling for both sides. Thanks for listening. Like and comment. And please subscribe, as that will help us get more videos out to those interested in the Middle Ages. See you next time on Medieval Chronicles 1066. Stay curious.